Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. Today, we're talking about a product review, and we're reviewing a new resin. Quite possibly one of the best resins I've used in a long time. And if you haven't heard about them, it's a company called FUNCRECOL, or Functional Creative Colorful. And they make a number of resins on the market. This particular bottle and a smaller bottle they sent to us for free for product review, and we are obliging them with a product review. And honestly, I don't mind because the product is actually worthy of a review, and most products that I talk about are probably the ones that are only worth reviewing, and this is definitely one of them. We had a test model that we created, or we had printed, rather, in both our classic DLP resin that we're commonly using, and this is the new resin. This is the FUNCRECOL, the brownish color here on the other side. So the reason I did that is because I was actually kind of impressed when I did my initial print, and I decided I needed to print something the same. I need to print the same file, same resolution, same printer, and do a literal side-by-side comparison and actually see, is this better or keeping up with what I'm currently getting with King Quality, but it just gives me more options this way. So I think I like some of what I did see about the way the resin worked, the viscosity, um, the flow was good. It wasn't water, although I mean, we're probably going to get there eventually. But it was more like milk or like heavy cream, rather than being like a kind of like a thin soup. And obviously, the thinner your resin is, usually this will help flow. And so I think that the flow or the fluidity of the resin, I think, is what allows it to create the high level of detail. The DLP resin, although it's a little bit thicker, I think that the ceramic particles and the other materials that are part of it make it do its job the way it does. So I think they do work similar in just two completely different ways. And I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to do the open comparison. We're going to review the new stuff, the FUNCRECOL. Now, again, this is FUNCRECOL. I'll bring the bottle up here again. I know it's... So this is the 111 miniature resin. This is a 1,000 milliliters in this bottle, and also got this little tiny bottle too. This is a 500 milliliter or 1 kilogram, or sorry, half a kilogram, and the other one's 1 kilogram. So yeah, I mean, there's you have your materials. They do come in two sizes, of like most resin companies. I'm pretty sure you can get them larger if you order them directly through them or through wholesale. But I haven't gone through any of that yet. This is something that was sent to us for free, and we just wanted to get this product review done because honestly, after printing something with it, I was that impressed with it that even after using the same resin for well over a year and a half, I am actually considering switching some of my printers over to this resin and actually using it for some components, parts, and miniatures because of how good it looked. I also like the fact that it's brown. I'm kind of tired of seeing everything in gray. I mean, I've actually recently moved over to white because we're just getting sick of gray all the time. Anyway, we'll cut into the video. I'm going to show you some actual footage of the prints being cleaned, removed, etc. So you can see them kind of each phase, and we'll come back. I'll show you also the settings in Lychee that I'm using to get the resin to work, and these settings should be similar for most printers with, of course, some simple tweaks and adjustments like maybe your retract speed. But for the most part, what I saw, the settings were actually fairly similar between printer to printer. So obviously you're going to want to check FUNCRECOL's website for the best settings for your machine. But for the most part, what I saw was there was a lot of similarities between the different settings on the different printers. But anyway, without further ado, let's cut into some of the footage, and you guys can see how good this stuff actually looks. All right here we're taking a look at the FUNCRECOL here, closest to the camera. That's the brown stuff on the build plate, and the one you can't quite see over there is the DLP Craftsman resin. We're going to take them both off, remove them from the build plate, then we're going to put them in the dirty bath, clean off most of the residual alcohol, and then remove the supports. Once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and clean them in the actual alcohol bath for about 30-40 minutes off camera. and then we'll come back and show you the final finished model so you can see them in full glory on the good camera, rather than the little camera that I use for most of my stuff. So anyway, we'll get more into it as we kind of roll through this. But first, we're just removing them from the build plate like usual. Just doing our first checks to make sure everything succeeded printing, make sure all the support structures worked, and then just checking to make sure that nothing was pancaked or anything lost during the printing process. And that's a pretty standard thing. I usually do that for every single print that I make. So once we get that down, we'll go ahead and move them over to the dirty bath, like I said, which is essentially a giant tub of alcohol that I use to remove a lot of the first cut of resin. So I don't make my washing system super dirty all the time, or I can stretch out that alcohol a bit longer. The other one is kind of like a big Tupperware container. I just throw the parts in there. I let them float around for a bit. I drain them, and then I'll remove the supports before putting them in the actual cleaning machine. So that way I don't get a ton of support material stuck inside the cleaning machine. One thing I will note is that the FUNCRECOL resin, actually the support structures did remove very easily, and I felt that even though I don't usually have too much of a problem pulling my supports off, and I do prefer to rip them off rather than clip them off. I mean, unless you can't, if your hands ain't pulling them off, you got to get a clipper in there, that's fine. But for the most part, they came off really easy, and they actually seem to leave a little less damage than my usual support structures would leave on the DLP resin that I'm used to. So for me, I mean, so far, this stuff gets a 10 out of 10. The way I've seen it work, the detail level, the cleanup, everything is wonderful. And for a resin to function better with my support style, well, that works even better for me. So honestly, it's a win-win in all of those situations. We're going to go ahead and remove the supports from the DLP, and you'll see I'm going to struggle a little bit more here with this one. And again, I don't know if that's just got to do with the tensile strength of the particular resin. Maybe DLP is just a teeny weeny bit stronger, and therefore the supports have a harder time pulling free. That could quite possibly be it. In fact, that probably is it. It makes the most sense, to be honest. It just has to do with tensile strength. That's not to say that the 111 resin is weak, because I mean, I was able to just pull those right off. I did not lose any chunks of material. It's very, very good material. It does not seem to have a high chance of breaking or shattering. So I think it's a good piece for gameplay. Like if you're looking for stuff to make minis with, this is definitely the material you might want to consider. Now again, I love the DLP stuff. Don't get me wrong. It's great. It does its job. But I think when it comes to minis, I think that this stuff might actually have a leg up. And I think I understand now why they say it's specifically made for miniature figures. And you can see the results right there. We haven't even fully cleaned these, and I can already see the different, the lines, the way they're cut a little bit deeper on the FUNCRECOL resin model versus the DLP resin model. And again, these were both printed at 35 microns. One of the prints took almost 10 hours. The other one took about 23 hours. Now, yes, the FUNCRECOL resin does actually require you to slow things down a little bit on your printer. And I don't fully get why they make you do that, because honestly, the resin is very thin. It's almost like a milky consistency rather than most resins that are a little bit more like pea soup, a little bit thicker. And if it gets colder outside, forget it, they get even thicker. But yeah, they require you to slow it down. We'll get into that when we get into the settings a little bit here. But let me go ahead and show you guys the actual cured models so you can see that. Now look at the nice finish on the FUNCRECOL resin. Look at that. It's a nice, kind of like almost like a clay brown. I think they call it camel, I believe is the color. But this is a really beautiful color. This is nice. This looks really good. And again, like I said, less support damage than I'm used to on this particular part. So I think overall, if this, works better with my supports, does a good job, seems to get higher level of detail for the same amount of, print. Again, it's taking me twice as long because of the way the print process is going, but we'll get into that a little bit more as I get into the settings and stuff. And there's a little comparison side by side, so you can see. I chose this model because it is heavily detailed, and I thought it was a good one. You see there's even more support damage on the bottom on the DLP versus the other one. has a lot less support damage on that bottom part. There's also this lamination that appears on the DLP stuff, which does not appear to happen on the FUNCRECOL resin. And I like that. I like that it has a nice matte finish to it. To me, that feels like it's going to take paint better. It's going to take finishing easier. And I think that's a bonus. So anyway, we're going to go on to the settings, and then I will finish this episode up with what our final thoughts are on this resin. So stay tuned. All right, let's hop on over to Lychee here, and I'm going to show you guys the settings that I used to make this work. And then I'm going to compare them to the traditional settings that I use, and you'll understand why the printer had to go so much slower. So this is the settings that I used here. And you can see you got your exposure time. This is high, 60 seconds. I don't normally expose for that. The light off delay is 2 full seconds. Exposure time is 4 seconds per layer. And I've also slowed my lift distance down quite a lot. Or sorry, I've decreased. Actually, no, the lift distance I didn't change at all, if I'm correct. I believe 8 might actually be where I'm at. The lift speed and retract speed, however, were decreased a lot. That adding the 2 seconds light delay for each layer created essentially a print that took, I want to say, almost 3/4 longer. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, it's more like double in 3 hours because like I said, the DLP Craftsman print was done in 9 hours plus. This was done in 23 hours, almost 24 hours. So that's more than double. But that might also, again, it's got to do with the speed. So this is that caveat I was talking about. You're going to get good results with this resin, but you're going to have to make sure that these settings that you've got are going to match either something really close to this speed wise, or if you want to check. I would honestly check FUNCRECOL's website because I'm pretty sure that different manufacturers might suggest different rests or light off delays, that sort of thing. Because 2 seconds is a lot. But let me tell you, the results are amazing. They speak for themselves. This is by far probably one of the nicest detailed resins I've seen for miniatures in a long time. And I've tried quite a few different from Anycubic. And we've seen a bunch of other tests from Soriatech and Frozen and, some other brands like that. This kind of reminds me of the Frozen resin. I believe it's if I'm not mistaken, it's one of their 8K resins that has a really good fluidity. I think it's called Aqua or something like that. But this reminds me of that. It has that level of fluidity. But I think the trade-off with this one is that you have to slow down your printer. It's not a bad thing. If we were to bring the layer height up to 50, you're going to see a less time on your print anyway. So you don't always necessarily have to, and we can try to estimate. That's not necessarily going to give us the right time. You don't always have to. Yes, the 18 hours. Use 35 microns to print. A lot of folks do for miniatures, but you don't have to. You can still print them at 50. I think they look fine. But you see, 18 hours, 7 minutes, 45 seconds. This is still a very long print, and that has a lot to do with the rest or the light off delay. And that has a lot to do with the difference in retract speed. And I'll show you what I mean because, here, we'll take a look at this again. We're going at 60 to 60, 60 to 100, 60, 60, 60, 100. Also, keep in mind, 4 seconds per layer plus a 2 second light off delay. That's really 6 seconds per layer. So, And, I tried to do the math for the print override. I just gave up on it because I figured I'd let the system estimate it. But now if we look at the way I use my DLP resin, even at 35, oh, I did actually change the lift. So the lift is, I normally start with 6 and I go up to 10. But as you can see, I go by millimeters per second, not by minute. And you see here, 120 by 120 instead of 60/60. And this is 180 to 360 instead of 60 to 100. So the retract speed, the lift speed, and the lift distance have all been modified. My light off delay is 1.5 times what it was, and I'm adding another 0.8 seconds to my exposure time, as well as the initial exposure of 60 seconds per layer, although the number of layers doesn't change. So, you have that. But when I'm comparing the time, this is definitely a faster way to do it. When you're talking about just raw quality, then I might recommend, using the FUNCRECOL resin because I love the DLP resin. It's good. One of the things I don't like about it is that lamination function that we see happen all the time where it gets shiny. It can have its brittle nature in some cases, like in the middle here where these supports will come off. A lot of times I'll be left with like a pock mark or two from where those little supports broke off. And these are fine. So anything thicker would have caused even further damage. And I can't imagine because sanding in here is just impossible. But the bottom line is that the FUNCRECOL one did not have any of those issues. And so I'm finding that perhaps my support style and method might work actually better for miniatures with that particular style of resin. So considering converting a couple of printers in the farm to use this resin exclusively. But as of right now, I was not able to find any listed on Amazon. It said it was currently on, and it's not in stock, and they did not know when they'd be getting it back. But if you're interested in buying it, I would reach out to the company on their website and see if they have some for sale there. Check out their Amazon store. Again, the name of the company is FUNCRECOL. It's functional, creative, colorful. This is the 111 miniature resin, and I give this one a 10 out of 10. Great resin. No complaints except for the speed reduction. And honestly, it's really just a patience game. And with the way this resin flows and how easily it drips off of the build plate, having a longer print doesn't mean you're going to have to guard it and make sure that it has enough resin. This actually did really well. Really only seemed to use the amount of resin that it needed to, and everything drained off and went right back into the vat as it was supposed to. So very good. Pretty low odor too, actually. I was going to remark that before, but I forgot to mention it. Fairly low odor. Doesn't really have too much of a smell. Compared to DLP Craftsman, that's got a pretty rich kind of like, there's definitely a petroleum-like smell going on there. But this stuff is a lot nicer as far as the odor goes. But like I said, the caveats, the takeaways are you got to slow down your printing. So if you're like some folks that really like to slam out the prints, this might not be the resin for you. But if you're just looking for some printer resin that's going to give you some super high quality prints in a really nice variety of different colors too that I saw in some of the different product lines, then this might be the resin to try for you. They have I can't say better. They have even more high rated resins as well that are available on their line as well. But we have not had a chance to try those. Hopefully, we'll be doing some more collaborations with these folks in the future. But for now, we're going to leave y'all with this. Thanks so much for watching, folks. We really appreciate it.